morning to everyone joined here. I, Gauri Kapoor, welcome you all to the 8th lecture of Kartavyam, the
एक एक
constitutional law.
मिनट गौरी अभी मेरे ख्याल से शुरू नहीं हुआ है ये ऑनलाइन
Started, man. You can. We are
स्टार्टेड हाँ
live.
ओके स्टार्ट
Good morning once again and welcome to the 8th lecture of Kartavyam, the constitutional law lecture series organized by Campus Law Center, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, in collaboration with top law universities and institutions all across India. It is an academic initiative that seeks to deepen constitutional consciousness among students, scholars, and practitioners of law. This lecture series brings together reputed jurists and public intellectuals to reflect on the living spirit of the Constitution of India. Today's topic is Kartavya jurisprudence, which asks us to think about duty not just as a moral idea, but as something that can shape our laws and guide how we live as citizens. We'll explore how the idea of Kartavya fits into the Constitution and whether duty should be seen as just advice or as a serious part of how justice works. Let's open our minds, sharpen our convictions, and reaffirm our collective journey towards a more just and accountable society. Before we proceed, I would like to welcome our professor in charge, Professor Dr. Gunjan Gupta ma'am, and our patron of Kartavyam, Professor Dr. Alka Chawla ma'am. Now, I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Gunjan Gupta ma'am to set the ambience for today's session by delivering the welcome address.
Thank you, Gauri. It is with extreme joy, heartfelt gratitude, and deep sense of responsibility that I welcome each of you to another meaningful chapter in the ongoing journey of Kartavyam. Each face I see online today, esteemed dignitaries, honored guests, respected colleagues, and cherished students, adds unique value to this gathering. Your presence transforms this occasion from a mere event into a true celebration of our shared commitment to constitutional ideals and public service. Every lecture in this series is an opportunity for connection, reflection, and growth. Today, as we come together under the banner of Kartavya jurisprudence, I feel especially privileged in times as dynamic as ours, when challenges often seem unprecedented. It is the timeless principle of Kartavya, a duty that guides us back to what matters most, our obligations to one another, our community, and our constitution. This ideal Kartavya lies at the heart of any just society. It reminds us that the true strength of a democracy is not measured solely by the rights it guarantees, but by the duties its citizens, leaders, and institutions are willing to embrace. Kartavya jurisprudence urges us to look beyond entitlement and towards responsibility, asking us what we can give back to the world that has given us so much. It is my immense honor to extend a warm and respectful welcome to our distinguished guests this morning, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Jabalpur, whose unwavering dedication to legal field and education continues to inspire generations of students and professionals across the country. I welcome you, sir. Ms. Archana Pathak Dave, Additional Solicitor General of India, a leader whose integrity, commitment, and exemplary service at the very pinnacle of a nation's legal system are models for all of us. I welcome Ms. Archana. I also welcome Professor R.K. Murli, professor at the Banaras Hindu University, revered not only for his formidable intellect and erudition, but also for the warmth and humanity he brings to the legal academia. I welcome you, sir. To each of our guests, it is a privilege to have you with us. I thank you for sharing your time and wisdom. As we embark on this collective exploration of Kartavya jurisprudence, my hope is that our conversation today deepens not only our understanding, but also our resolve. May we bring inspired to renew our commitment to duty, service, and justice, both as individuals and as stewards of our constitutional democracy. Once again, I thank you all for being here, for lending your presence and your spirit, and for being part of the shared pursuit of excellence and purpose. Thank you. Over to you, Gauri.
Thank you, ma'am, for your encouraging words. It is a distinct honor to welcome Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, sir, currently serving as the Vice Chancellor of Dharmshastra National University, Jabalpur. Professor Sinha brings with him a legacy of scholarship and institutional leadership, having previously served as the Director of Indian Law Institute and holding teaching and research roles across law schools in India and abroad. With advanced degrees in law from the University of Delhi, University of Nottingham, and a doctorate in international law from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Professor Sinha's expertise spans human rights, constitutional law, international humanitarian law, and refugee law. His prolific publications and regular engagements with institutions like the ICRC, Ministry of External Affairs, and academic councils speaks to his commitment to advancing legal thought and public service. And now request Sir to share his ideas with our audience.
Thank you very much, Gauri, and thank you, Professor Gunjan Gupta, Professor Seemaji, Professor Alka Chawla, Professor Murli, and Madam Archana ji, and all participants. Indeed, it's a great pleasure for me be to part of Kartavyam. Like when I received a request from Seemaji long time back. I said ki our university will join. There's no, so we are integral part of this Kartavyam exercise, and I'm very happy that I have been. Our institution has been associated. Our teachers are also part of this exercise, and students. Uh, and in that connection, my duty also to join and share some of ideas in this platform. What I propose to do in given time, like 10 to 15 minutes, I'll speak. Uh, as Professor Gunjan Gupta mentioned, when we talk about the duties, it's not only the duties of individual. Duty of the state is also important. Institution, as you identified, institution, how institutions are performing its duty for the welfare of the citizens. So this is the second part, which I institutional part I'll take. And the third important part which I have in my mind to discuss about the international human rights instrument and how the international human rights instrument incorporated the principal duties as a integral part of the human rights instrument. Not many, but some of clearly stated duties in starting with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other human rights instruments there. I have been mentioning this for when I take the legal research class or legal research methodology. Many of somebody might have discussed. So when we talk as a researcher, when we look into the fundamental duties, we find something inspiring in the constitution itself in the out of 11 fundamental duties. So when we talk about the research, we have in the mind research is a, like some way it's a inquiry, questioning. You have in mind ki why this is happening, and you search known to unknown. You look for some material, you start thinking, contemplating. That is the research, in main. And scientific inquiry, systematic, detailed. These are the exhaustive is there, and ultimately it helps in the knowledge building and also uh, growth of the society, evolution. So it helps the society to grow. Whatever the field we work, it was the medical, it's a scientific development COVID vaccine, it helped all of us. So it was like a research. So the government of India said it will take 1 year to develop vaccine to deal with the COVID-19, and which has to be administered or something. So that was also done in the research. So when we look into the constitution, our Indian constitution, in two articles particularly, very two sections of the part 4a is very important, and that is the reason I say the teacher or the student should remember these two articles when this two sections of the article 51A when they do the research, and that is particularly Article 51A H, which says to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. 51H, which is directly related to all of us. We have very like it's a guiding force for the research. It says clearly to develop the scientific temper, comma, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. That is the essence of the entire research, whether it's a legal research, medical research, or scientific research, or any research. This spirit is important. And scientific temper is very important. And then another one which is equally very important. So I think in the Kartavyam, we need to emphasize, re-emphasize every occasion. There are how we as a teacher, students should think about their research and what are the spirit of the research should be. That has to be guided by the Article 51H, and ultimately by following the spirit of the Article 51H, we fulfill what is mentioned under the Article 51J, which says so because of research to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. If you read to Article 51H and 50J, H gives you direction how to go about and how you contribute in the excellence of the country, development of the country is important. Take for example, we have been totally ignorant for many years when we talk about the development. No, so now the concept of development, welfare of the people, so like some way these spirit service bhavantu sukhina, it was always in Indian ethos, but we have never thought about so seriously to bring this knowledge which existed in the Indian practices and do some research. And of course now the government of India is doing on the Indian knowledge system. So we as a Kartavyam platform, I also urge all of us, we go back in some way, limited way, I'll not say it in very big way. I have been working on the conflict laws like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and I did Hinduism, international humanitarian, Manu and the laws of warfare, in general Indian practices of the warfare in the ancient India. So there are scope, so we have a duties to work in the support of the government agenda in building Indian knowledge system. It's not mere sometimes you get a call from the regulatory body, they said you fill the form, you submit. Filling and submitting will not help. We have to devote our time. So routine way we go and we receive a call from the concern, I'm not going to name the ministry, and they said, have you filled the form? I said, we will fill the form. But how this going to help? Institution has also duty to support the teachers. Institution has a responsibility to support all of us, not merely filling the paper. And then you say, we have done that. It has to be reflected. It has to be visible in the by through our research work, by our production. So it should not be taken. So there is a duty on all of us work on the Indian knowledge system. Why we go, if we talk about development, we talk about the development. Why when we talk about the duties, we start with the duties from the constitution. But there is a duty of the king in the ancient India. Duty praja dharma, raj dharma, this was the duty of the king. King is the welfare of the people. It existed much before what we have 11 here. So the idea welfare of the people, the king had a duty towards his people. वही राजा अच्छा था जो प्रजा की वेलफेयर के बारे में उसके अपने कर्तव्य, तो राज्य धर्म राज्य कर्तव्य जो कर्तव्य है, तो वहां से हमारे कर्तव्य के सारे चीजें आते हैं, एंड वी हैव टू look into on that. So I just conclude here in this part, and then I'll move to the second. Ki as a duty, as our kartab, we must, because we all are educationists here, academician, we make sure that the agenda of the government, whether we agree or disagree, but we work towards enhancing, bringing the Indian knowledge system in the forefront. And in that connection, if I say Professor R.P. Anand, he continuously fought. He did not go get due recognition. He continuously fought and said to the world that international law is not developed by the Western civilization. It was existed in the Indian system. So he has written many books on the ancient practices on the Indian, development of international law. Unfortunately, his scholarship is limited to some of his disciples, some of the students, and nobody knows that. But if you read that, we need to bring that particular. We need to. It's a duty of all of us when we teach international law in the class or international institution, the perspective of the eminent scholars who have done. Equally, the Professor Upendra Bakshi also wrote many papers on that particular India, so that is also very important for all of us to look into. There is a now we come to the another important point, which takes us to the international perspective. I leave it because there, and in all human rights instrument, rights and duties is strongly integrated and recognized, and finally mentioned in only one human rights instrument, that is the African Charter on Human and People's Rights of 1980. So African Charter on Human and People's Rights, some way it talks about rights and duties very first. And if you look into the, it's not only the, and it uses human and people's rights. It's a collective. Also, it talks about the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. All other human rights, International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but here African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So they have seen the people collectivism. That is the there. And instrument recognizes in very first part one, which talks about rights and duties. So otherwise each instrument they talk about the rights, duties hardly they talk about that. And Article 1 of this instrument, African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and this is very interesting environment. It talks about the right to property. This is the only instrument which talks about clearly about the protection of environment. Protection of environment is not reflected even in many human rights instruments. But this instrument, African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which represents a large number of African, 55 countries of the Africa, and there are a lot of uh, articles which are part of that very a new it takes note of the society. Takes note of the society and how its cultural practices, how society have grown, and that is the reason this has been there. If I read it quickly, it says in the Article 1, the point which I have been highlighting, the member states of the Organization of African Unity. Now African Unity has been changed and it has become African Union. Earlier it was known as Organization of African Unity, OAU. So it has been renamed African Union from 2000 onwards. So the member states of the Organization of African Union, parties to the present charter, shall recognize the rights, duties, and freedoms enshrined in this charter. So it says ki, states have a duty, right? States have to recognize those states which are party of this treaty. They must recognize rights, they must recognize duties and freedoms enshrined in this charter. If I take, and then it has a separate three articles, Article 27, 28, and 29, uh, as a part of chapter 2. So the chapter 1, it talks about the human rights and duties, and then chapter 2 of the African Charter, it has three article 20, 27, 28, and 29. So we have on the Constitution 11, but it talks about, so maybe we can draw some inspiration in addition to our the constitutional provisions is there. It says Article 27, every individual shall have duties towards his family. So like the constitution, so a duty towards his family, that is very important. In the modern era, we are moving from the family. We are so much uh, deeply occupied in our profession. We have less time for the family and other there. But they give importance. African society gives importance to the family, and it says every individual shall have duties towards his family and society, the state and other legally recognized communities, and the international community. And then it says, then it goes, the rights and freedoms of individuals shall be exercised with regard to the rights of their. Article 28 talks about every individual shall have duty to respect and consider his fellow beings without discrimination. And then Article 29, it goes on number of the list in the duties. So I leave it there, but I'm just wanting the student. There are this African Charter on Human and People's Rights talks about the duties in much elaborated. So Article 27, 28, and 29 gives further list of the duties. So one, like, we need to work on these rights, the duties is there. The another important instrument which also talks about the duties, and I'm sure some people might have also already spoken about that. More or less what I have discussed, what I have said, that is integral part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights is an instrument which covers all sets of the rights, all types of the rights. It has civil and political rights, it has economic and social rights, and it has also duties. Very few instruments you will find civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, and duties. So when we uh, look into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it contains only 30 articles. In 30 articles, one article is exclusively duty towards family, duty towards the society, duty towards the recognition. It is mentioned everywhere. So somewhere, there are two instruments where I clearly find out that duties has been stated, duty has been incorporated clearly under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and under the African Charter and Human and People's Rights. If a state, the third point which I would like to highlight, when a state becomes a party, or when a state, like, the government of India, we say we fight. So we fight in case, and constitution gives you also a special status in case of the violation of fundamental rights. We have a remedy, we can go, but we have to also think about why we need to go to the court, why we need to go to the court for redressal of the violation of human rights. Why not we stop the violation of the human rights at the first stage? Why I have to agitate every time? Why I have to face discrimination? And then I say, "Okay, this is the right," I go court and then I file case and get a relief also. Or your court gives you a remedy. Justice has to offer give the remedy. So remedy is there. So I feel that the state has failed to do its duty. State has failed to do its duty, that has compelled citizen to go to the court for the remedial measures. If a state performs a duty sincerely and intelligently, the cases of violation of human rights will be reduced. If education is done, if health sector is taken care of, if timely violation of the atrocities committed by the uh, authorities, if reduced, so there is a duty of the state not only to protect our human rights, they have a duty to respect and duty to remedy. So FCHK, so it's a duty of the state, promotion, protection, and fulfillment of the human rights. If you see that, the state has a duty. So we say the state has an obligation. So what we are using, enforce with government of or any state, if a state is party of human rights, state parties has an obligation to respect human rights, protect human rights, fulfill human rights, promote human rights. I say we can also reinterpret and say state has a duty to respect the rights of the individual. State has a duty to ensure that transnational companies and other enterprises should not violate human rights. State has a duty to protect the environment. State, so we can see that duty. If a state perform its duty, and that duty will be, I think, so state has to protect human rights abuse within its territory, its jurisdiction. So I say duty is on the state institution, what like Professor Gunjan has mentioned. And just to conclude, I think the last part which I have, it's very important, where the rights and duties have been interlinked, and that has been done by the one philosopher, political philosopher, Henry Swiss, Henry, Henry Swiss. So in his work, he has given three core duties. He mentioned about the three core duties, and that is important. Important. So he talked about the rights out. So he says, rights mentioned in the human rights instrument outlines three core duties, and that duties individual as well as state. So I think basic right duties. The book is written by Henry Swiss. It's a, like, it's a contemporary scholar. He's still alive. We can think about, and he says the duty to avoid depriving, the duty to avoid depriving. So what he means, and he says the duty to avoid depriving. So we have a duty not to deprive a person. What he mean, I will say that. And he said this is the duty to avoid depriving, means you restrain yourself. You are not positive, it's a negative duty. So you are deprived, so we have a duty to avoid. So when you avoid means you restrain yourself, you are not become participant, you are not complicit. So you are able, so this is a negative duty to avoid depriving is a negative meaning. As I said, meaning it involves refraining from action that would deprive others of their basic rights. So, like, if we hate, like, it's going to, so we are refrained, state, individual, not to do something which will affect the rights of the other person is there. The duty applies to everyone. So I say the duty to avoid depriving applies to everyone. So we focus more on individual. I think individual, state, institution, everyone. The duty applies to everyone, including individuals, businesses, and government. Now, role of the business. So duty to avoid depriving, it's not only individual, duty to government, duty to business houses, transnational company. And for example, businesses should not engage in practices that exploits workers or damage the environment, thus depriving of their basic needs. So we said, so this is very important, interlinked with the rights. How you have to put the duty to avoid depriving, that is the first. Then it talks about the duty to protect from deprivations, the duty to protect from deprivation, and this is like, positive duty, the duty to protect from deprivations. This deprivation, this is a more a positive duty, requiring actions to prevent others from being deprived of their basic rights. So government proactively, like, programmatic rights, take timely action. So people should not be deprived. So protect their economic rights, social rights. So more proactive, the positive rights, programmatic implement. Responsibly often falls on governments and institutions that are in a position to create and enforce laws and social structure that safeguard basic needs, for example. So basic needs, like, adequate standard of living. So basic needs, now we if I just take 1 or 2 minutes here in the second, we talk about the sustainable development goals. But if the thrust of the sustainable development goals, essence of the sustainable development goals, if you look into, that is more on the eradication of extreme poverty from the earth. Though it covers social rights, though it covers economic rights, though it covers about the institutional duties, it talks about everything. But the thrust of the sustainable development goals today, and before sustainable development goals, millennium development goals, was on eradication of extreme form of poverty. कि वर्ल्ड कहाँ से हटाना है एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म पॉवर्टी, इट्स फ्रॉम द अर्थ प्लैनेट. So basically that is the institution, individual, and government are working the duty to protect from deprivation. So those who are deprived, so we have to do something. So basic needs are to be full. So that is the means adequate standard of living, means roti, kapda, or makan. So state has a duty to ensure that, state and global community has a duty to ensure that nobody should nobody sleep with hunger. Everybody must have something to eat. And things which are happening in other parts of the world keeps on bothering us and disturbing us. Let the third point, which I'll just come and conclude, the duty to aid. So what we have learned, duty to avoid, duty to protect, and duty to aid. the deprived. So what we learn? The duty to avoid depriving. Don't deprive. Don't do anything which likely affect the enjoyment of anybody. You play an important role in protecting from deprivations. If somebody so is proactive role, one has to take. And then last, duty to aid the deprived, how to assist, how to give the support. This duty specifically targets those who are affluent and have the resources to help those in need. CEO argues those who possess a surplus of resources have a moral obligation to assist those who lack the basic necessities of life. This could help involve providing directed, supplying development projects, advocating for policy that promote global equity. So that is the duty to aid. I will end here by adding one more thing, taking you to the uh, John Rawls. John Rawls in his book in Theory of Justice. So he in a theory justice he talked about the difference principles. He did not argue more in a socialist mode. He said that capitalist mode is fine. And he takes in society, what is the difference principle? And that is the duty to aid. So we can connect the duty, what Henry Sui is talking about, that has also mentioned, highlighted by the John Rawls in his book Theory of Justice. And there he said about the difference principle. And difference principle, what he meant, he said that he also focused on the resources should be equally distributed as far as possible. But same time he recognized in society, the because of the hard work, a person, because of the education, because of their skill, because of their capability, some person will move in the hierarchy. They will go up in the society because of their economic status, their educational background. So there will be difference in the society. Not everybody will be equal. So some will be some economically very sound. He'll climb on the scale, sheer hard work. He goes up. They say that is justified. They said, no, no, we don't need to stop. Communists they say stop them. No, everybody has to be forced. So they say, no, that society should recognize that difference is there. But the individual who takes the benefit of his skill, education, and everything has a duty towards society. So he or she should give the society back surplus, what duty to aid. So he also take under unprivileged sections of the society, deprived sections of the society, deprived nations. So how the persons who are in advantageous position or states which are affluent, they have an obligation, they have a duty to help those who have been deprived. So that is the a difference principle he has taken. So I see that the concept of duty, और जो हमारी सारी कर्तव्य है, कर्तव्यम की अगर जो कहे कि हाउ वी वर्क टुवर्ड्स मेकिंग ए बेटर सोसाइटी, how we end the existing discrimination in the society, how we all can learn and take a pledge कि we on our own, whatever possible, contribute in the knowledge building and make the society a better place for the living for every human being, where less discrimination, no discrimination, and opportunity, equal opportunity is available to the everyone. How to fulfill the goal, preambular goal mentioned under the Indian Constitution, that is the duty of as an individual, a state, and every other organs working in this field. With this, I come to conclude, and I'd like to thank everyone for giving me a wonderful opportunity to think about this particular subject and discuss, share my ideas with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this brilliant exposition.
Thank you, sir, for giving such an interesting and deep analysis of the articles of the Constitution of India and also the charters at the international level. Kartavyam, a distinguished legal professional and currently a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, as well as the Additional Solicitor General of India. With over 2 decades of experience, her practice spans some of the most defining constitutional and public law cases in recent history, from advancing gender equity in the armed forces to safeguarding privacy and promoting police accountability. Her commitment to legal integrity and justice is reflected not only in her courtroom advocacy, but in her enduring service to the union and state governments. Professor Dave's approach combines deep legal scholarship with practiced action, making her an ideal voice for the Kartavyam series. I request ma'am to share her valuable words and wisdom with the people present with us today.
Thank you very much, Gauri. And I understand that how I am the lone, advocate here, and that is why Gauri is referring me as a professor. I mean, I would love to be called as one. I'll have to do more studies. Anyways, thank you very much. I have to say that this unique initiative, which has been taken by Campus Law Center, University of Delhi, is a remarkable one. Kartavyam, the theme itself, is such an intriguing phenomenon in itself. And I thank Professor Seema Singh. I mean, we were discussing about this topic a little while ago, and as each of the series went by, I could see and hear eminent speakers speak before me, even today and even otherwise in the entire series, and this is really overwhelming. The kind of jurisprudence that we are talking about is really not much discussed. So let's see how we can delve more into it today, as well as in the coming series, where you will have many more prominent speakers. Thank you, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar, throwing so much light on Article 51A, and that's the bedrock, Kartavyam, fundamental duties. Then Professor Dr. Gunjan Gupta, Professor Dr. Alka Chawla, Professor Dr. Murli from Banaras Hindu University. It's a great occasion and pleasure for me to be here today. Now, without further delay, when I was thinking about Kartavyam as a topic, I thought maybe we can talk a little bit about the idea of fraternity. And try and link how this idea of fraternity goes through the lens of fundamental duties. So I dig up a bit. I found certain interesting facts which I would like to share with you all today. Well, in our Bharatiya civilization, this concept of fraternity, or we say Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, we always believe that the entire earth is one and we are all, brothers and sisters. And we never talk about our, me alone. Whenever we are discussing things, we always would want to give due credit to others. We always, as per our Bharatiya Sanskriti, we always see that everyone gets its place. So I'll just quote a small, something which is very prominent and which is discussed in Rigveda in Mandala 10. And it goes like this. It says, Sam gachadvam, sam vadadvam, sam vo manasi janatam. And that means go together, speak in harmony, let your minds be in agreement. So when, and this is spoken how many thousands of years back, how they are equating this idea of togetherness is that it is a way of life for us. When we say, and when we've practiced this concept from times immemorial, this becomes an intrinsic virtue of the society. And this is to achieve a common betterment in day-to-day transactions. I mean, maybe this concept, when we are talking, it looks like a concept, but this was so embedded. And that is the need of the hour. Like it was practiced in our previous eras or by our ancestors, forefathers. How Professor Sinha talked about the Raj Dharma. Dharma is what the basis is. When we say that in ancient times, the idea of justice, it came from the idea of dharma. In Bauddha Dharma, it's called Dhamma, whereas we have been, a common parlance has been Dharma. And that was the guiding force for everyone. The kings, they always considered themselves as not the rulers, but someone who would, by the aid of Dharma, see what is right and wrong and would serve the society. So there was not something, like an autocratic system. Of course, when I talk about fraternity and through the lens of fundamental duties, I am of the firm belief that the ideal of fraternity could be achieved only in a society by being mindful of not trampling upon the fundamental duties of others, rights of others. In these times, when we are talking too much about rights, Professor Sinha was also talking about how these days cases have risen up in the courts. That's because over past few decades, we have always been told about rights. We talk about fundamental rights like a drop of the hat. No one talks about duties. So when you are asserting your fundamental right, you have to see that there is something which is called the rights of others as well. So your fundamental rights cannot be absolute over others. And therefore, during my course of address, you will see that how I will talk about the ideals of fraternity by being a responsible citizen and being considerate towards others' fundamental rights. Because it is only then that we can build a society where everyone feels included and taken along. In our constitution, the idea, the word fraternity is very well embedded in the preamble itself. And there are three important words: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now, how it is said that we have borrowed this idea of fraternity from the French Constitution and the French Revolution. However, I have a certain different view on that. So what happened during the French Revolution of 1789 was that there was an absolute monarchy in France, which transformed into an administrative monarchy. And in the 18th century, then there were people who wanted to throw out, that form of government or the thing which was there. And for that, they all came together and fought against the rulers, the government then in power. And when they came up, they said that it's the fraternity which is, the fraternity which is building them. And according to me, that concept of fraternity is you are collecting to overthrow something, or you are collecting yourself against someone. So the idea which is connecting you is something that you want to achieve. It's a particular objective that you want to achieve. However, how it is conceived in our Bharatiya parampara is something that we should take care of always. It is never for one particular goal or to achieve one particular objective. It is for the betterment of everyone. So how they, in the French, they called it as liberté, égalité, and fraternité, which is now liberty, equality, and fraternity. And how, in one of the judgments, how these three have been called as the Trinity. I will come to that a little later during my address. Again, when I was researching on this word fraternity, I came across something like this in the Greece literature as well. The ancient Greece, they had this Latin word called frater, which is little similar to what we conceive of a fraternity. And this is known as fratry, which has roots in ancient Greece. And as you're all aware that the Socrates, a prominent Greek philosopher, he was very very regular in arranging dialogues and indulging in debates with the fellows in the locality in the city of Athens where he lived, and he emphasized a lot about the on the pursuit of knowledge through dialogue and reason. So it was not something that he would think of and he would want to pass off. He would want to discuss through dialogues and then reach to a conclusion, and that's how the term fretter came, that they would all sit together and for a common good they would discuss things. So and of course we've already discussed what it means in our ancient civilization, the values. So we are a little more towards the Greek concept, but of course the Indians have had it much prior to how even the Greeks had. Now, how this word fraternity was understood by the framers of the Constitution. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, how this comes in the preamble is fraternity assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. Please see, the important word here is individual. They are talking about everyone, not just the citizens. They are talking about any individual, and to assure that the dignity of the individual, and it's very important, the next is the unity and integrity of the nation. So this basically means that you have to see that whatever you do, your actions should always aim towards unity and integrity. Now, this concept definitely is not an individualistic concept. It is meant to be practiced by each and everyone. In the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, during the 21st February 1948, the drafting committee had added a clause about fraternity in the preamble, even though it was not the part of the objective resolution, because it felt that the need for fraternal concord and goodwill in India was never greater than now, and that this particular aim of the new constitution should be emphasized by special mention in the preamble. And that's how it forms a special mention. It takes a special place in our preamble. In words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he elucidated this core idea of fraternity. What is your ideal society? I quote, "What is your ideal society if you do not want caste?" is a question that is bound to be asked of you. If you ask me, my ideal would be a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. And why not? What objection can there be to fraternity? I cannot imagine any. An ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to other parts. In an ideal society, there should be many interests consciously communicated and shared. This is fraternity, which is only another name for democracy. Democracy is not merely a form of government. It is primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. So you see, there were, in the entire Constituent Assembly debates, two people have majorly, talked about the concept of fraternity. One was, of course, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and the other was Acharya J.B. Kriplani. In his words, and I quote, he says that what we have stated in this preamble are not legal and political principles only. They are also great moral and spiritual principles. And if I may say so, they are mystic principles. Take democracy. What is it? It implies the equality of man. It implies fraternity. It is a principle which says that life is one, that you cannot divide it. That is, it is the same life pulsating through us all. And he goes further. I don't want to quote everything, but it is very interesting how there was not much discussion. It seems like everyone was on a common page when they were discussing about the idea of fraternity. I mean, some concept which everyone agreed to, but after the constitution was adopted, was conveniently forgotten, and everyone started talking just about their rights. Now we see how our Supreme Court, how our Supreme Court has taken this concept of fraternity and has dealt with it in little detail, and how to arrive at a particular conclusion in their judgment. They have used this concept of fraternity. So there's one recent judgment, which is the 5 judges bench of in Janhit Abhiyan versus Union of India 2023 judgment, and which is also commonly known as the EWS reservation case. And there, this one very interesting paragraph I bumped into, which says, and I quote, the fraternal principle is deeply embedded to this nation's ethos and culture. So, something, we always see that how the courts talk is only about what's written in the statutes. But when the court starts looking at the philosophy part of it, it becomes even more relevant, it becomes more comprehensive, and it can be understood by one and all, even those who don't really understand the intricacies of law. But if you kind of connect it with the ethos, the culture of our society, then it is readable for the common man as well. So I found this interesting line that they say that the fraternal principle is deeply embedded to this nation's ethos and culture. Imagine 5 judges bench of the Supreme Court talking about the cultural values of our society. So it's not, I mean, for the students, it's not only that your parents will talk you about culture and how you should behave, but even the judgments of the Supreme Court also lays stress that what is so intrinsic in our Indian values, our Bharatiya parampara, if I can say so, हमारी भारतीय परंपराओं में जो चीजें या जो भी जो हमें सिखाया जाता था, वो अगर हम सभी as responsible citizens of our society, if we follow, then I don't think so that anyone has to ever go back to the rule book to see that what I'm doing is right or wrong. Then they go further. I will just read 1 or 2 lines. It says, fraternity as a concept awakens humans to the reality that despite our apparent or superficial differences, and what are these superficial differences? Ethnic, religion, caste, gender, origin, or economic status. The institutions we create need our collective cooperation and individual commitment. So imagine all these issues that are there in today's society. We are talking about, there are so many cases, litigations on religion, caste, gender. But how conveniently the court says that it is only if you think about fraternity as a concept, then the idea, these are all superficial differences is what the court saying. And it says that every social order invariably contains individuals with differences, be it grounded in ethnicity, wealth, talent, or realization of one's abilities, the diversities around. The idea of fraternity is to awaken the consciousness of each member of society that the human institutions which they create, the ideas they seek to develop, and the progress they wish to achieve cannot be in isolation, by separation, but with cooperation and harmony. So I found it very, very interesting, and I can suggest you to read these few paragraphs on really if you want to understand the concept of fraternity through judicial lens. And then, of course, I got, I read this judgment in Subramaniam Swamy versus Union of India, where they talked about sections 499 and 500, the criminal defamation IPC provisions. And there also, they talked about the term of fraternity, touching upon each of its dimensions. And just to quote 2-3 lines, I know the time is running short. They say it is constitutional value which is to be cultivated by the people themselves as a part of their social behavior. There are two schools of thought, one confessing individual liberalization and the other advocating for protection of an individual as a member of the collective. The individual should have all the rights under the Constitution, but simultaneously he has the responsibility to live up to the constitutional values like essential brotherhood, the fraternity that strengthens the societal interest. Fraternity means brotherhood and common interest. So you see how, because they are talking about sections 499 and 500, which is the criminal defamation, they are saying it is important that you value other person's rights. It is important that you value that everyone is unique, they have their rights, and you cannot transgress into their boundaries. So that's how the courts are dealing with the concept of fraternity. There's one judgment, a little old one, where once when I started my discussion, I talked about how these three terms, the liberty, equality, and fraternity, are called the Trinity. And this is where, in this particular judgment, it refers to as Trinity. It says, the judgment is called Panchayat Varg Shramjeevi Samudayak Sehkari Khedut Cooperative Society versus Haribhai Mewabhai. And this is 1996 judgment, where they say social democracy means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as principles of life. They are the Trinity. One cannot divorce one from the other. Without equality, liberty would produce supremacy of the few over the many. Equality without liberty would denude the individual of his initiative to improve excellence. And without fraternity, liberty and equality would not nurture as their natural habitat. So how beautifully these words have been, we've been explained how these words are interlinked with each other. And as my time is coming to an end, I'll just, I'll just touch upon the aspect how, what is the way forward, how we can, what is the need today for fostering fraternity through fundamental duties, taking inspiration from the Vedic teachings. The topic for your discourse through various lectures is Kartavyam. And I thought I would try and connect it with the word fraternity. So somehow these two are really interconnected, intertwined with each other, and kind of convey a common message. And we've discussed how our the ancient society, the Bharatiya Sanskriti teaches us the idea of fraternity, how our ancestors have taken it, then how the courts have interpreted it. And you can see even in the contemporary times, the endeavors of the government also, we should really appreciate when they, there are few programs that are done, and which we should appreciate, because this is also in a way spreading our version of fraternity across not just India, but across the world. Recently, we have the summit of G20, which was organized with the theme of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which was attended by the world leaders from across the globe. Also, I feel it is my also my thinking, and I believe it very firmly, that the abrogation of Article 370 is again a very, very welcome step in this direction of removing all such relics of past, which were posing hindrance in uniting Indians as one and the same, thereby reinvigorating the preambular promise of securing fraternity to individuals in this country. Dr. Sinha talked about 51A, so I don't want to really dwell too much into it. But, when we are talking about Kartavyam, one of the important aspect, and we must appreciate that we have to, take what was ours. We have to, take the onus or the ownership of the things which belong to us. And to my mind, when you say that the word liberty has been taken from the French Constitution, in my personal opinion, I feel that we had it from the beginning. It was not something new which was given to us or we took it. This concept was embedded right from day one. We talked about it day in and day out. The concept of dharma, fraternity, was always basic, to our society. Recently, you see how we are also trying to, take the ownership and tell everyone that our Indian knowledge system has what we talk about, today, the criminal laws. We say that it is borrowed from English and all that, but if you really see the knowledge system that was prevalent in the ancient times, it had everything. In fact, they talked about the Reformation part of it, which was very, very prevalent. So with all this, I think I should end my talk today. I've taken a little time, little extra time. And thank you very much for inviting me over. It's always a pleasure interacting. I mean, it was not really a direct interaction, but to speak where the students are, the young minds are, it is always a pleasure because they are the future. They have to understand these things very well so that this is being carried forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, I genuinely believe you're meant to be a very distinguished professor. Now, moving on, it is with great respect that we welcome Professor R.K. Murli, a seasoned legal academic and currently Professor of Law at Banaras Hindu University. Professor Murli is known for his powerful blend of jurisprudential insight and philosophical depth, often drawing attention to the ethical foundations that animate our legal system. His scholarship spans human rights, legal theory, and the moral responsibilities of governance, making him a compelling voice in the conversation around duty and public accountability. In events like Kashi Nyaya Samagam, he has questioned the growing tilt towards right-centric discourse and called for a jurisprudence that restores the balance with Kartavyam. As we reflect on law not only as a set of rules, but as a guide to living responsibly, Professor Murli's presence adds immense value to today's session. I now request Sir to share his views with us.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm very thankful to Kartavyam organizers for giving me this opportunity. Let me start because when I looked at this particular topic, Kartavyam, many thoughts came into my mind. And I think, of course, it's a very relevant and a very appropriate topic in this contemporary state of affairs in the world, where duties are forgotten and where duties are neglected, where duties, of course, are, in my opinion, after the globalization, privatization, wherein the rights jurisprudence, of course, has started taking the ascendancy. And then that, of course, has become a pervasive talk with regard to rights jurisprudence. Now, of course, I should tell the audience here, when we refer to certain standard books on jurisprudence, because I cannot quote all those books, but something which is very commonly written there, it is written that we live in the age of rights. Now, of course, we live in the age of rights because rights make us independent. Rights make us, of course, rights also have certain negative things. Rights, of course, give you many positive things. But rights make you independent. Rights make you aggressive. And rights, of course, make you question everything around you without understanding what exactly are your duties also. So, to the contrary, what I understand is that duties make you interdependent. Duties make you, of course, understand each other. And duties make you contribute for the development of not only your particular family, your society, and you can, of course, also contribute for the development of your country and the world as such. So, when I, of course, I see, when we talk about why rights are so popular, no, there are various reasons as to why, of course, rights are so popular. And when I went through certain standard books, certain examples given there. Today, we like to express ourselves in the language of rights. And we seldom today, in the contemporary world, we don't express ourselves in the language of duties. Because duties we understand are not taken seriously. Suppose I express myself in the language of duty, I may be overlooked, I may be ignored, I may be surpassed. But the moment I assert myself and I speak in the language of rights, then of course I am given importance. And my, of course, because, see, rights, of course, one speaker in the beginning, when she was introducing the participants, she said a very beautiful sentence. That sentence is entitlement. No, let us not restrict ourselves only to entitlement. Let us look beyond entitlement. That, of course, I will come to. But then, notwithstanding that rights have very good features, that means very positive features. Rights, of course, make the dispute decisive. That means the moment you say it is my right, obviously that ends the other moral discussions. For example, you say it is my right. No, rights are peremptory. Peremptory means they, of course, ensure that all other discussions are not to be advanced anymore. Once I say it is my right, then what happens here is that I just want to tell the audience here that when we look at this jurisprudence of rights, rights are also criticized for being dogmatic, for being elitist, and for making you legalistic. And ultimately, rights make you egoistic. So these, of course, are very fundamental questions which question the rights jurisprudence and then take you towards a different jurisprudence, wherein, of course, you can overcome these demerits so far as the rights jurisprudence is concerned. Now, because let me give an example. For example, today in the modern world, when we talk about human rights, now the human rights are projected to be negative rights. And then we say that all human rights are negative rights. And so far as human rights as positive rights, the second generation human rights are concerned, now there the problem is that the argument is that who is the person who holds the duty? Now, of course, you have a right, but who is the duty bearer? Now, what is the use of giving a right when there is no duty bearer? Because right holder must have a duty bearer. Because we understand rights and duties are correlatives. And so we always want to, because we want to we go into deontology. That means we want to search as to who is that person that is, of course, duty bound. For example, here, when we talk about social and economic rights, and then we look into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we want to make it a reality, these second generation human rights. But frequently we are confronted with this basic question, which is pertaining to the deontological thinking, that who will be the duty bearer? Now, the question is what? Why should I carry that duty? Why should I help the people who are starving around me? Why should I help the people who do not have bread and butter to survive? Why should I help the people who, of course, do not have even clothes to wear? So these, of course, are questions of humanity. And when we say that, because ultimately we want to ensure that these human rights, they also are accepted in the statute, they are made enforceable. Of course, I do understand that law is not the only particular subject to which human rights are made enforceable. The very name human rights, that means your character, your personality. What is the best guarantee for human rights? Law is not the best guarantee. The best guarantee for human rights is your moral nature. That means whether you are inculcated into that moral thinking or not. Because once you understand the problems of people around you and you have empathy for them and you understand that, okay, they are my brothers, my sisters, the people in the world, the people in the country, then of course you don't require any law to compel you to discharge your duties towards others. Law is, of course, because in the words of Professor H.L.A. Hart, he says that law makes your conduct non-optional. But when we say that we are different from animals, and we say that we have natural law, we are normative, we understand what is right and what is wrong, Natural law, of course, is based on science. Natural law is, for example, law of nature, that is based on science, that is empirical. But we human beings, apart from having that law of nature within us, which we share with animals, we also have natural law within us. That natural law distinguishes us from animals, distinguishes us from animals. So we have a sense of innate understanding of what is right and what is wrong. But even then, we are not discharging our duties. Even then, we fail to discharge our duties. Now, the question has gone to such an extent that we only talk in the language of rights. For example, the example which I wanted to give you. Now, a mother is admitted in the hospital. Now, the mother says that the children have a duty to visit her in the hospital. Because she is admitted in the hospital, she requires her children to help her. Now, if the mother expresses that in the language of duty, she is not taken seriously. Children have a duty. But suppose she says, I have a right that my children should come and visit me in the hospital, then she is taken seriously. Why? The reason is that we have been accustomed to this expression in the form of a right-oriented language, and we understand that only when we express ourselves in the language of rights, we are taken seriously. Now, this particular thing, wherein I studied the Marxist literature also, wherein the argument was that today even the children, they talk to their parents in the language of rights. The family is a particular place where we, of course, have emotions. We have love and affection. Now, all these are, today we don't talk in the language of emotion, sympathy, and then something like compassion, like something, a humanitarian language. Today we talk in the language of rights. Even in bedrooms. That is the reason, perhaps, the Supreme Court, which overruled the judgment in Sarita versus Venkat Subbaiah. Sarita versus Venkat Subbaiah is a very landmark case decided by the AP High Court, wherein Justice Chowdhury declared Section 9 as unconstitutional because he said that Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act, it is against the spirit of Article 14 and 21 of the Indian Constitution. And Sarita is right that she, of course, owns her body, and her body is her property. That is, of course, what Robert Nozick also says, self-ownership. Now, when we talk about, see, this is a highly right-oriented language which Sarita is advancing. In India, we understand that the marriage is an institution. Two individuals get married, but more important than the individuals is the institution. So it is institutionalism versus individualism. When Sarita spoke in the language of Article 14 and 20 and said Hindu Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act is unconstitutional because basically it is interfering with my life and liberty. Now the AP High Court, Andhra Pradesh High Court declared that particular section is unconstitutional. But the Supreme Court in some other judgment, when it overruled this particular case, it said a very beautiful sentence. The sentence is, if constitutional law were to be introduced into the bedrooms, every bedroom will become a China bazaar. That means the moment you introduce rights language, no, you become aggressive. You are individualistic. You only are confined, restricted to your own welfare. You are egoistic. You become dogmatic. And you don't see the other man's argument at all. So today, of course, rights are worshipped. And today we understand the directive principles of state policy already have taken the back seat. Particularly after 1991 in India also, we see that the concept of social justice is, of course, being relegated to the back position. And today we speak in the language of fundamental rights, even in India. Directive principles are given a go by. Duties are not important because duties, of course, duties and rights, they're complementary to each other, part 3 and part 4. But today we understand that the part 3 is being given more importance. And the very concept of social justice, which is, of course, the basic preamble of our constitution, that is, of course, being diluted to such an extent that I worry that we are becoming a highly individualistic society, unmindful of the problems of the people around us. So we always talk in the language of rights, and we enjoy that particular language, and then we, of course, cherish that particular language. Let me come to, see, when I talked about the second generation human rights, my dear participants, what I mean to tell you is that who is the duty holder? Then two types of duties are coming to come forward. What are the two types of duties? One is duties based on justice. The other is duties based on morality. Now, so far as duties based on justice are concerned, because the speaker who introduced us in the beginning, now she talked in the language, she said entitlement. Now, when we talk about duties based on justice, justice is an entitlement. Justice is a claim. And suppose you say that the second generation human rights must be respected because on the concept of duties based on justice. And obviously, justice is a fault-finding theory. For example, I'm a rich man, and you ask me that, sir, please ensure that my second generation human rights are fulfilled, or ensure that, show me some humanitarian considerations. Now, the first argument I will take is that whether I made you poor. Now, tell me the reason, because justice is a fault-finding notion. If you can prove that I made you poor, then I will help you. But suppose you cannot convince me that I made you poor, you are poor because of some other reason, then I don't have any duty towards you. The problem with duties based on justice is that the poor man, who of course is talking in the language of a moral right, and he says that, sir, I'm starving. And then, of course, second generation human rights are there because we understand that 2/3 of the population in the world, they are going to bed without food, proper food. And they, of course, are going to bed without proper food, without proper clothing. It's a shame on us. Please excuse me for this harsh word. Article 25 of the UDHR, it talks about basic right to sustenance. But even today, that dream is not fulfilled. Because we human beings, we have become so restricted to our own self, we don't look beyond ourselves. That is the problem. And when anyone asks us to discharge a duty, the first question we ask is that, why should I do that? What is the reason? Tell me, give me the compelling reasons. And if you can give me the compelling reasons as to why you can hold me responsible, then I will do the duty. The duty is based on justice. Here I want to strike a very interesting, important distinction between commission and omissions. See, generally we are responsible only when we do a commission. That means commission, we do something. And we say for omissions, we are not responsible. Omissions, for example, you say a poor man starving on the road. No, you think that is not my duty. But you don't understand that you are omitting to do certain things. Of course, the law punishes only commissions. Certain times, there are exceptions where the law says omissions are also culpable. But in 99% of the cases, the law says only commissions are culpable. For example, the famous example given by Professor Amartya Sen in his book on idea of justice, wherein a young lady was murdered in the roads of New York, America, and the lady was crying for help. And the police, because of course she was stabbed to death. The poor lady died. And the police came and arrested the person who stabbed her. But the persons who were looking at the particular murder from inside their houses, behind their curtains, who were watching that, but who could have gone to the help of that particular lady and who could have prevented the murder from taking place. No, we thought they are not culpable. We thought only that person who, of course, was the person who took out the knife and stabbed her, only he is responsible. So the argument here is that omissions are not culpable. So far as we are restricted to only our own particular family and our own particular self-individualistic nature, where we could prevent certain things, we are not going to prevent those things. We see a poor man starving, and then we think it is not my duty. And this language of law, wherein of course you say duty is based on justice. So the moment you say duty is based on justice, the deontology comes and tells you, why should I be made liable? Why should I carry this duty? Tell me, give me convincing reasons. And that is how today we are struggling, because we have to give proper reasons to hold others accountable. And others are saying that I am not accountable because I did not make you poor. Show me what is the fault I have done. Show me what commission I have done. Now, omissions are not culpable. But in some countries, it's a very positive sign that they are also taking omissions seriously. And they are making omissions culpable by amending their laws and then saying that you have these basic duties. No doubt, you are not directly responsible for that particular starvation. But even then, you can be made liable because you have certain duties towards other fellow human beings. Now, the other duties which I want to talk about is that duties based on justice and duties based on morality. Now, so far as duties based on morality is concerned, that of course is, see, the moment you say duties based on morality, it all depends on how much morality you have. Now, duties based on morality, unlike duties based on justice, they are not based on any particular fault-finding mechanism. So far as duties based on morality are concerned, now the simple argument is that, sir, you have 40 rotis, you have in plenty, and sir, I am starving. So if you give me 2 rotis, I am not demanding it as a matter of right. Understand that. Justice is the claim. Justice is an entitlement. So duties based on justice, they of course are based on entitlement claims. So you should prove that the other person from whom you are expecting the duty to be discharged, you should say that, you should prove that he, of course, has made you poor. He is the person who is responsible for your distress. Then only the other person can be made liable. But when you come to duties based on morality, it has got nothing to do with this entitlement or claim. It talks about humanitarian consideration, which, of course, unfortunately, are lacking conspicuously in the contemporary world. It only says that because you have 40 rotis, now if you give me 2 rotis, now your rotis will continue to be 38. That means it's a good number. Only 2 rotis have come. And that way you can ensure that the world poverty is reduced to a certain extent. So between duties based on justice and duties based on morality, now people think that morality is something wherein it is a charity. Justice, duties based on justice is a better language because you can say that I am entitled to that. But duties based on morality, it's based on charity. That is the reason Robert Nozick, no, because Robert Nozick had written that very famous book, Anarchy, State and Utopia, wherein, of course, he takes very revolutionary arguments to say that, in my opinion, because he is against the concept of welfare state. And he also, of course, says that rights are inviolable. Rights are inviolable. That means he has given maximum importance to rights. And he says that so far as duties are concerned, all duties, because we have only negative duties. I will not interfere with your life. You don't interfere with my life. So he is against the concept of positive rights. What is the difference between the positive right and the negative right? Negative right is basically a right not to be interfered with. Positive right is a right basically wherein you have to assist others. Now, Robert Nozick is saying that so long as non-interference is concerned, that is welcome. I will not interfere with you, you don't interfere with me. But Robert Nozick will say the moment the law imposes a duty on me to help others, the law is, of course, interfering with my liberty. And through interfering with my liberty, the law is trying to bring in equality. And Robert Nozick says that because he's a libertarian. So obviously he will take the argument that liberty is more important. And equality cannot be brought about by interfering with liberty. So he says that in the very concept of liberty, there is equality because the law has given equal liberty to everyone. And so far as material equality is concerned, Robert Nozick is against that. He says you earn your own bread, you earn your own butter. I don't have any duty towards you. So he's against the concept of welfare state because welfare state believes in positive rights. And he is against the concept of welfare state because he thinks the welfare state is a more extensive state. And he doesn't want the state to become more extensive because he believes only in minimal state, a night watchman state, which is restricted to only maintaining law and order and protecting you from external aggression. So here what I mean to tell you is that when you talk about duties based on humanity, so my conclusion, my first conclusion would be that let us train our youth, train our children to become more humane. We teach them physics, chemistry, and then mathematics, but we are not teaching them moral values, ethical values. We think that our students, of course, are IITs, and they, of course, are great doctors. But are they great human beings? Are they genuinely concerned about what is happening around them? Are they, of course, trying to understand what type of problems are there in India? How many people are taking food 2 times a food? So these issues must also be imbibed into the blood of the students, children, so that they are not only physicists, they're not only great doctors, but they also understand their duties towards other fellow human beings. At least here, I would just, because duty is based on humanity and duty is based on justice. Now, I would go in my second part of the lecture, I would enter into a different area altogether. I think not all completely unconnected, but definitely it would be an area which, of course, focuses on the importance of duties. Now, let us understand that just before the Mahabharata war, that means we all know, Krishna and Arjuna, they had a dialogue. And Krishna was asking Arjuna to do duty without taking into consideration the consequences. Do your duty irrespective of the consequences. Krishna is telling Arjuna that fare forward. Now, fare well is a different thing. Krishna tells Arjuna, fare forward, just go forward. Whether you do well or not, that's a different question. But do your duty. Arjuna, on the other hand, because Krishna is a deontologist. That means deontology at its peak. What is that? Do your duty irrespective of the consequences. Duties are, of course, very important. Arjuna is saying that, my dear Krishna, because Krishna is also his friend, of course, his advisor also. Arjuna is saying that, my dear Krishna, you understand that this is, of course, a very great war. And I understand justice is on our side. It's a fair war. That means justice definitely is on our side. The Kauravas, they don't have justice on their side. But though it is a just war, though we are right in doing this particular war, but Arjuna is saying that just because it is a just war, just because we have justice on our side, just because we have right on our side, it doesn't mean that, Krishna, that I should kill my own brothers. Because agent-centered means what? Agent-centered consequentialism. Now, Krishna is asking Arjuna deontology. That means he's saying that don't be consequence sensitive. Now, ignore the consequences. Well, the consequences are not important. Doing duty is very important. Whatever be the consequences. But Arjuna is talking about a consequence sensitive jurisprudence. Consequence sensitive means what? He's saying that I have to kill so many people. And some of them are my brothers. Some of them are my Acharya, Drona, my Pitamaha, Bhishma. So Arjuna is saying that I will be responsible for all these deaths. And tomorrow, of course, I'm very confident that we will win the battle. But the consequences, my dear Krishna, are not so good. So you ask me to do the duty, but I am worried about the consequences also. So the consequences should also be taken into consideration. No, it's a conflict between deontology and teleology. Wherein in teleology, that is, utilitarianism is a form of teleology. Pleasurable consequences over the painful ones. So you look at the pleasurable consequences. You are more interested to know whether the consequences are going to be good or not. So Arjuna is saying that Krishna is asking him to do the duty. Arjuna is saying that, okay, duty is important, but I will do the duty only when the consequences are going to be better. But in this particular context, Arjuna is saying that though the battle, of course, is being waged for a right cause, and we have justice on our side, because justice is on our side, it doesn't mean that I can go and kill all these people, many of them with whom I do not have any relationship at all. They're all we are just fighting in the battlefield. And many of them did not do anything wrong to them. They are just on the side of Kauravas. But I have to kill them. And this devastation, this destruction, though it is for a right cause, but that is not that much welcome. So duty is not always welcome, Krishna, because duty, of course, are welcome only when the consequences are going to be good. To the contrary, Krishna is saying that the duty is duty irrespective of the consequences. So I will correlate this discussion with our contemporary situation in the world after some time. So what I wanted to tell you is that when we talk about this consequence-sensitive jurisprudence, and wherein Krishna is talking about he's saying the consequences are not important at all. Don't be sensitive to the consequences. So he's talking about a deontology. And that, of course, will engage us in my future talk. Right now, let me come to certain other very important points. The other important point, I can give an example, because the speaker who introduced us in the beginning, she talked about entitlement. Now, let me tell you, what is this entitlement theory of justice? So far as this entitlement theory of justice is concerned, Robert Nozick has given this entitlement theory of justice. We all know that. Robert Nozick was completely against distributive justice. Now, distributive justice, which is also known as social justice, it is, of course, revolutionary. And today, the Indian Constitution accepts distributive justice as one of the basic features of our preamble. Let me give an example to set the discussion in the proper perspective. Now, two people are stranded in a desert. Two people are stranded in a desert. One is an old man, the other is a young man. And now the old man understands that he is going to die because he is, of course, did not get water and food. Desert is the place, of course, where in food and water you don't get. So old man thought his death is very near. So he called the young man and said that, my dear young man, in case you survive and in case you reach Delhi, so I have a daughter who lives in Karol Bagh in Delhi, who lives in Karol Bagh. So these are my property papers. So please hand over these property documents to my daughter. So after saying that, the old man dies and the young man was rescued. Young man is rescued by some people who of course spotted him, and he was rescued. So he came safely back to Delhi. So he went in search of his daughter. So after going there, he saw his daughter and he understood that the daughter is already very rich. She is having crores and crores of rupees. And her father had just given her 10 crore more rupees. Now the young man entertains a moral question, a moral dilemma. What is that? He thinks, why should I give the property to the daughter? Of course, she is entitled to the money. She has a right. But the young man thinks, she of course is entitled to the money, but she doesn't require the money. And when I see people around that particular place, there are so many people who are poor, who are naked, who are not able to, who are not even getting 2 meals a day. Now the young man thinks that instead of giving the property to the mother, to the daughter, though she is entitled to it, but why should I not break my promise and distribute the money to the poor people? So the moment you enter this, you enter into this question, then Bentham becomes very relevant. So Bentham is a utilitarian, and Bentham was a great social reformer. We all know that. No. Bentham is also a great social reformer. Now, what is the argument of Bentham? Bentham will say that because you see, looking into the past is one thing, justice looks to the past, utility looks to the future. So Bentham is the utilitarian. So Bentham is the consequentialist. So he wants to know whether the consequences will be better or not. But suppose you argue with Bentham that Mr. Bentham, promises ought to be kept because you made the promise to the old man that you will give the money to the daughter, and daughter is entitled to the money. But Bentham will say that that is not, because there is no rule that promises always ought to be kept. Promises can also be broken. And this a priori principle, because I just want to strike a very interesting, very important argument here, a priori versus a posteriori. Now, so long as the a priori arguments are concerned, now Bentham is, you take the argument that the promise has been made to the old man and the promises ought to be kept and the daughter is entitled to the money. So what is your duty? The Bentham says that promises need not always be kept. Promises must be kept only when you understand by following the promise you are going to make more people happy. Then you keep the promise. But suppose you understand that by breaking the promise you can make more people happy and you can give more pleasure to them, then obviously you can also break the promise. So nothing inherently, the promise is not inherently something which is not to be broken. It all depends on the consequences. So here we are entering into a very important discussion wherein today when we talk about the welfare state, the welfare state interferes with your liberty and tries to bring about equality. Now let me tell you, John Rawls, because a professor was also talking about difference principle. Now let me tell you what is this difference principle and why because John Rawls, though of course he is an American, and though he has of course talked about justice in a neutral, because John Rawls said justice is neutral between rival conceptions of the good. He says right is prior to the good. Because Americans, they always believe right is prior to the good. Right is prior to the good, wherein the good is subordinate to right. But Bentham will take the argument that the right is, of course, not important. The good is more important than the right. So Bentham will say, we have to bring about good state of affairs. We have to bring about good state of affairs. So the good is more important. And the right is subordinate to the good. So whether the right is subordinate to the good, or whether the good is subordinate to the right, this is of course a debatable thing. I don't want to enter into that. But let me tell you, John Rawls, he said that justice knows no moral desert. Justice knows no moral desert. What does it mean? John Rawls is saying that some of us are more intelligent than others. Some of us are born in affluent families. No, he says it's a contingency. It's a contingency means what? No, I am born in an affluent family. It doesn't mean that I own everything which comes to me because of the fact that I am born in a rich family. No, I am naturally gifted. My intelligence is much more than the other people around me. So I am very intelligent. So because of my intelligence, I am naturally a gifted person. Now, John, no, what will you say? Because of my natural intelligence, I got a seat in IIT. But John Rawls says that your intelligence is not your property. It's a contingency. That means you are fortunate to be given that intelligence by nature. You did not do anything to get that intelligence. And in the same manner, he also says that you are born in an affluent family. That is equally a contingency. So from that, he goes towards duty. What is the duty? The duty is that the people who are intelligent, the people who are born in affluent families, no, they should understand that it is a contingency that they are born in an affluent family. It is a contingency that they are endowed with natural assets, natural intelligence, and natural superiority over others. But John Rawls is saying that it is not your property. And because of that, he says others also have a right in your intelligence. That means if you are intelligent, you have a duty towards others to ensure that whatever you earn with your intelligence, of course, the money which you earn with your intelligence, others also have a share in that. Now, you will ask me that this is completely because Robert Nozick talks about self-ownership. Robert Nozick says what? My intelligence is my intelligence. If I am born in an affluent family, then it is, of course, all my credit. And I don't have any duties towards others. So Robert Nozick will take the argument against, because Rawls is his teacher. So Robert Nozick will take the argument against his teacher by saying that justice is an entitlement. And if I acquired my property in the proper methods, if I did not deceive anyone, if I, of course, I acquired the property through, appropriated the property from nature, and I did not do anything wrong, the property belongs to me. Others do not have any right in my property. That is the reason he goes to the extent of saying that income tax is theft. When the government taxes my property, he says government is committing theft of my property. So he is a libertarian. So obviously he, of course, advances the cause of liberty. And he says equality is something which we cannot bring through law. And he, of course, says the welfare state is something which is not to be encouraged at all. But see, Rawls, what is the argument he is taking? Rawls is taking the argument that some of us are gifted by God. We are naturally intelligent. Some of us are born in affluent families. So Rawls is taking the argument that justice knows no moral desert. That means don't say that you are morally entitled to your intelligence. Don't say that you are morally entitled to the family in which you are born. That's a contingency. But that, of course, is a very important argument wherein Rawls is talking about the difference principle. And he says the rich have a duty to help the poor people. And the persons who are, of course, in the higher strata of the society, they have a duty to help the people who are in the lower strata. Why? Because it is a contingency. It is not something which is wherein you have a right. Now, let me, from this particular discussion, because you see, when we talk about duties, you have to give proper reasons as to why the other person is under a duty. Now, one duty, I talked about duties based on justice. I talked about duties based on morality. I talked about the importance of justice and utility. I said utility is forward-looking. Justice is backward-looking. Like the example I had given with regard to the desert, wherein the old man, of course, died. But the young man made a promise to the old man, whether promises always ought to be kept. Whether you keep the promise, though you understand that the daughter will become richer because she will get 10 more crore rupees. So the rich will become richer and the poor will become poorer. So Bentham thought that society must be reformed. So how the society can be reformed? He thought that the a priori things must be attacked. So that is the reason he said natural law is a nonsense. He said natural rights are illegitimate children. Because Bentham thought, Karl Marx that we don't live in nature, we live in society. No, Americans even today, they believe that they live in nature. So when you live in nature, you are selfish, you are egoistic, you only think about yourself. But when you live in society, you understand you are in the company of others. So that duty-oriented approach will come. Directive principles of state policy. Directive principles of state policy, it has come because of the sociological school of jurisprudence, wherein we understood natural rights versus social duties. Now, natural rights are given in part 3. Social duties are given in part 4. So there is a fight going on between fight means our Supreme Court said both are complementary to each other. But today we understand that natural rights are being given more importance even at the expense of social duties. Now, these social duties, when we understand our social responsibilities, our responsibilities towards our fellow human beings, now we understand that we live in society and we are never alone. And Bentham says you can never be alone. So Bentham says utility, egoism plus altruism is equal to utilitarianism. Egoism plus altruism. Think about others also. You don't exist for your only for yourself. The sociological school said, man, you are a means to an end. You are not an end in yourself. But all the natural rights, they think that you are an end in yourself because you live in nature. That is the reason Bentham went to the extent of saying that all natural rights are antisocial. Why did he say all natural rights are antisocial? Because you only think about yourself. You think you live in nature. You are very individualistic. You are not concerned about others' problems. Of course, you are concerned about your ethics and morality, but your ethics and morality don't extend beyond you. You don't care about people who are around you. That is the reason the sociological school of jurisprudence came. And the sociological school of jurisprudence talked about the functions of law. What are the functions the law must discharge in the society? The law and the state and the law and the society. Austin and Bentham were obsessed with the state. They made law political. But the sociological school said law is equally social. So once you understand social, when you understand society, when you understand the people in whose company you are, so obviously you have certain duties towards them. But the frequently asked question is what? Why should I be made liable? Because I don't owe anything. I remember one very important case. That important case is Excelware versus Union of India. The judgment given by our Supreme Court, Excelware. Justice Antwalia had given the judgment. So that judgment is very, very relevant for our discussion. What is that? That particular judgment is on the basis of Chapter 5B of the Industrial Disputes Act. Now, what is Chapter 5B? Any employer who is running a big industry, that means wherein 100 or more than 100 persons are employed, 100 or more than. See, if he wants to close the industry, he has to take permission from the government. He cannot say that it is my fundamental right to start a business, it is my fundamental right to close the business. Now, when you want to close the business, certain social issues are also there. Because if you close your business, workers will become unemployed. And their existence will be at stake. And they will be thrown onto the roads. So Madam Indira Gandhi, in the year 1976, she introduced Chapter 5B into the Industrial Disputes Act. This Chapter 5B said that if you are a big employer, employing 100 or more than 100 workmen, you should take the prior permission from the government before you close, before you lay off, before you retrench. And in Excelware's case, employer challenged this particular Chapter 5B as unconstitutional on the ground that it is interfering with his fundamental rights. Now, see the argument, the employers are saying that it is my fundamental right to close. I need not take permission from the government. If the workers become unemployees because of my closure, I don't have any duties towards the workers. Of course, so long as they work under me, I will give them salary. But once I close the industry, our employer-employee relationship has come to an end. And I am a private employer, Excelware. I am not the government. So I don't carry that social justice principles on my head. And Justice Antwalia, he of course said that, under that particular argument, he said that Chapter 5B, Section 25O is unconstitutional. I cannot go into all the details. He said this Chapter 5B, that Section 25O, it is of course an unreasonable restriction on the fundamental right of the employer. So now the further things are very important, my dear participants. After declaring Section 25O as unconstitutional, the Supreme Court said, let the Excelware be taken over by the government. Let the government run the industry for the sake of protecting the employment. My question here is that whether only the government is responsible for the duties towards the people, whether the multinational companies, whether the private companies. India is a mixed economy. We have private companies, private players also. Suppose you say that only government is responsible to discharge the duties and the private players are not responsible. They are not socially accountable at all. Are we not letting the private people to escape scot-free? The Supreme Court said that if Excelware is running in losses, let them close the industry. Let them make an exit. Let the government take over the industry and let the government protect the employment of the workers. Let the government be socially answerable. My question is, why should only the government be made answerable? Why not the private people? Because the private people are equally responsible for duties towards the society. The Bhopal gas tragedy. So many things, wherein the multinational companies, they wash their hands off. And they say that we are not legally responsible and then we will not give you any compensation at all. But today the time has come wherein we understand that society is equally important. So you cannot say that only government is responsible for the problems in society and we, the private people, we are not answerable at all. Now, in one of the very interesting cases, my dear participants, a Scott's case, ESCORTS. In the Scott's case, the Supreme Court said the private people in India, they do public business with private money. That means the Supreme Court is saying that these people who say that we are not socially responsible, we are private people, only the government is responsible, and we are not socially accountable. The Supreme Court said that these private people who wants to run away from their duties, from their responsibilities, they take the argument that why should I be made liable? It is the government, of course, that is having the duty to ensure that social justice is promoted. But we are not responsible. But the Scott's case told us very clearly these private people are socially accountable because they do private business with our money. They do private business with public money. They take loans from the banks and they get loans from the banks at a very concessional rate of interest. So they are doing private business with public money. And tomorrow when you ask them to do discharge duties toward the public, they say we are private, we are not responsible, only the government is responsible. But understand that your business blossomed. Today you are a successful businessman. Your company is making profits. All this because you did private business with public money. The public money is also a very important component of your private business. So you have to give arguments to say that they have duties. No one is discharging duties voluntarily. And you have to give powerful arguments. Robert Nozick said, it is my body, self-ownership, my body is my property, and I don't owe anything to others. Whatever I do within the parameters of law, that belongs to me. All rights are negative, no right is positive, and only the minimal state is welcome, welfare state is unwelcome. These are the arguments in the contemporary world wherein we are living. And everyone speaks in the language of rights, completely oblivious to the basic duties also. Let me come to the last part of my lecture. And please, because if I'm exceeding my time limit, I would request the organizers to give me some 10 more minutes because this is a very interesting discussion. Now, when we look at Rawls, so Rawls and Kant, Immanuel Kant. Now, when we talk about Kant, because 5 minutes I'll talk on Kant, because Kant can be compared to our Lord Krishna. Now, Kant, of course, was a deontologist. And Kant said morality is not empirical. Morality is not empirical. What Kant is saying that do duty only for duty's sake. Don't do duty because you understand that by doing, for example, you are on the road. You see a beggar who is starving. Now you give him some money. And then you want that you should be now appreciated. And you want that others should say that you are a very good man. And then you, of course, must be appreciated. That means Kant says your basic duty is what? To help the poor man. But don't help the poor man because you think that by helping him, you will gain some popularity. These are empirical things, wants, desires, preferences. So Kant says, don't do anything don't discharge your duty just because you think that your name and fame will increase and then you'll be more accepted, you will get promotion, other people will, of course, regard you as a hero. So these things are extraneous questions. Kant says because his duty is deontological. He is rising above the empirical world. Let me give an example. For example, Immanuel Kant says that suppose a shop is there and a young boy walks into the shop. And then the shop owner understands because he is a young boy, he can deceive him. He can say that the cost of the bread which the boy wants to purchase, he can say that though it is 40 rupees, he can sell him for 400 rupees, he can deceive him. But the shop owner thinks, if I deceive him, I can deceive him. But he will go and tell his mother. He will go and tell his father. And they will come and ask me. So my reputation will go down. But that is the reason he prevents himself from selling the bread for 400 rupees and sells it for 40 rupees only. He has done a moral act because he sold only for 40 rupees. But his motive is not good. His motive is what? He did not do duty for duty's sake. He thought, let me do the duty because if I don't do the duty, I'll be ridiculed, I'll be questioned, but tomorrow people will not come to my shop. So this is the argument. That means here, I can connect Kant to human rights. So when you talk about human rights, and Bentham was against human rights, But Bentham will say what? Human rights are welcome only when they increase utility. So Bentham has no great respect for human rights at all because he thinks pleasure and pain is more important. He thinks right and wrong is subordinate to pleasure and pain. Bentham takes the argument that justice is subordinate to utility. Now I will give an example. From this example, immediately I will go to the next area. Now I will conclude Kant in 2 minutes. Now, for example, a person goes to a doctor. The person who goes to a doctor, let us suppose he is having only fever. But the doctor already has 3 patients. And one is having a kidney problem, other is having a liver problem, and other is having some other major problem. Doctor thinks what? The patient who is the 4th patient who walked into the clinic just then, doctor thinks that let me kill him because he is only having fever. And let me kill him, let me take his kidney and give it to the person who is having kidney problem. So that way, of course, I'll be killing only one. But I will be saving 3. So Bentham will say, go ahead. Because ultimately the pleasure is more important. If by killing 1, you can save 3, then go ahead and do that. That is wherein John Stuart Mill will come. John Stuart Mill, he is a rule utilitarian. Bentham is an act utilitarian. No, John Stuart Mill says what? If every doctor does that, no, people will stop going to doctors in the future. People will be afraid of going to the doctors because they will understand that doctor will treat them in a utilitarian manner. He may also kill the patient because if he thinks that by killing 1 patient, I can save 10 patients, he will kill me also. So in the very short span, what will happen? People will stop going to doctors, and that will increase the pain. The pleasure will be reduced and the pain will be more. So John Stuart Mill says, rule utility. Let the doctor not decide what to do with the patient. Let us have some rules which are made by the elders in the society, the educated people. And the rules will decide which acts will give pleasure, which acts will give pain. For example, you are on a Delhi road. You see a red light. And then you understand there is no other vehicle on the road. And you want to cross the red light. Because you think that even if I cross the red light, there's going to be no problem because there are no vehicles at all on the road. And no accident will take place. So you think that if I stop at the red light, I'll be wasting my time. And my pain will be increased. If I cross the red light, my pleasure will increase. That is what Bentham will say. But John Stuart Mill will say that stop at the red light, though there is no vehicle in the nearby. Why? It is the rule that you should stop at the red light. Because if you follow the rule, what will happen? The pleasure in the longer run will increase, though it might give you immediately pain. But ultimately, the pleasure is going to increase. So in the same manner, now John Stuart Mill tells the doctor, don't kill the patient, don't do anything. Just treat the patient and give him medicine, that's all. And don't yourself do the work of killing 1 patient and justify that the 3 other patients are saved. This is not something which you should do. Now, what will you say? Immediately you will say, John Stuart Mill has given importance to the human rights of that patient, now who will not be killed. But Immanuel Kant will say, even John Stuart Mill did not respect the human rights of that person. Now, why is he saying that the doctor must not kill him? Because he is saying that if the doctor kills him in future, the patient will stop going to the doctor. That is the reason the patient must not be killed. That means you have done the right thing, according to Immanuel Kant, but for the wrong reason. Immanuel Kant is saying that do the right thing for the right reason. Do the right thing for the right reason. So his duties are not empirical at all. His duties are transcendental. Wherein, finally, I just want to conclude Immanuel Kant with another example. This example is, see, duty versus inclination. Categorical versus hypothetical imperatives. Autonomy versus heteronomy. In short, these 3 principles will communicate the essence of Kant's philosophy. Now, let me just give an example to make Kant understand, to make you, not the teachers, the students, to make them understand Kant. Now, there is a patient. And then he is, of course, there's a human being. Now, he is healthy. And he has, of course, a love to live because everything is going on well. He is very healthy, very wealthy. He is getting his blood pressure checked up, sugar levels controlled, everything is fine. But one day what happens is that he loses his interest for life. That means duty versus inclination. So inclinations are empirical. They take you towards one direction. But duty is more than empirical. So even if you find your life very difficult to continue because you have been affected with cancer, even then Immanuel Kant will say you have a duty to survive. You have a duty to survive. You have the duty to live. So long as the life is good, you love your life. And that is an inclination. And you want to continue your life. But when life becomes miserable and you want to end your life, Immanuel Kant says that suicide and murder both are same. Because in murder, you are using some other person as a means to an end. In suicide, you are using your own self as a means to an end. Immanuel Kant says human beings are at the top of the nature cycle. So they should be given maximum importance. So human beings are not a means to an end. And finally, one more example. Immanuel Kant's duty-oriented approach has gone even beyond the Bible. What does the Bible say? That don't do to others which you do not want to be done to you. There is an example given in Immanuel Kant's book. What is that? Now, your mother is admitted in the hospital, and you come to know that your elder brother had an accident and he died. Now, whether you should disclose that to your mother or not. Because if you disclose that to your mother, you have a duty to disclose, but you know for sure your mother is going to die. But now, suppose you go according to the preachings of Bible. Bible will tell you what? That, but it's a contingency. Bible will say what? It all depends on the situation. Put yourself in the mother's situation and understand whether if you are in your mother's situation, whether you want to be heard that news or not. But Immanuel Kant says that nothing is a contingency. Tell your mother, even though she may die, because irrespective of the consequences, don't worry about the consequences. Even in the most difficult situation, do your duty. For this type of duty approach, wherein Immanuel Kant and Rawls. Rawls follows Immanuel Kant to a very great extent. Rawls believes that right is prior to the good. Now, when we talk about the social contract theory given by Rawls, I'm coming to a very important point now. Please, the audience here, because my time is limited, but I will communicate the essence of this discussion. Rawls is talking about only two types of duties. What are the two types of duties? Natural duties, which are not based on consent. Natural duties are not based on consent. Natural duties, according to Rawls, they are duties which, of course, rational persons, reasonable persons, they have towards each other. So these natural duties are not based on consent. Now you cannot say that I will not murder you because I gave you my consent not to murder. Now consent is not important so far as natural duties are concerned. These are the basic human duties. So these, of course, are universal. These natural duties are universal. The other duties Rawls talks about is duties based on consent. Now Rawls says, barring the natural duties, all the other duties, they are based on consent. Now you will discharge those duties only when you give your consent. And if you did not give your consent, you are an individual. You are individualistic in your thinking. So American thinking is individualistic. So Rawls says, I am responsible only for those duties wherein I gave my consent. Natural duties, of course, they don't require consent. Then Michael Slander had written a very popular book. In that book, he is criticizing Rawls. What is the criticism he makes? He says, Mr. Rawls, there are duties beyond consent also. Don't say that only two types of duties are there. One type of duties are natural duties, the other duties are which are based on consent, which are voluntary but based on consent. But Michael Slander is taking the argument that there are a third type of duties also. These are known as solidarity duties. Duties based on solidarity. Now, for example, Rawls will say whether you have duties towards your family. Rawls will say, I have duties towards my family, only I have given my consent. If I had not given my consent, I don't have duties towards my father. I don't have duties towards my mother. I have only natural duties. And above that, I don't have any duties towards my family members also, unless and until I give my consent. So Rawls says, for example, we ask, is it virtuous to be patriotic? No, you want to love your country. Rawls says, you can love your country, you can be compelled to discharge your duties towards your country only when you give your consent. So he says, patriotism is not a good thing because you love your country and you want to discharge your duties towards the country. Now, John Rawls will take the argument that every other duty, barring that natural duty, is based on consent. And if I did not give consent, now you cannot compel me to love my country. So this is where Rawls is taking the argument that every particular duty is either a natural duty, or if it is not a natural duty, you should show that I have given my consent. For example, my father incurs huge loans. Now, whether as a son, I have a duty to discharge those loans, the Rawls will say I am not responsible because moral individualism. Moral individualism. Rawls will say that I am responsible for the debts of my father only when I promise my father I will discharge these loans. If I did not promise my father, I am not responsible for his loans. But this type of arguments are being attacked by the communitarians. The communitarians like Michael Slander, they say that you have duties towards your society. You have duties towards your family. And these are not based on consent. Whether you give consent or not, that is not important. What is important is that it is your society. It's a special duty. That means these duties are special. For example, you say that whether you love America or not, you are an Indian. No, America is not special to you, but India is special to you. You are born in this country. So far as America is concerned, you can say that, okay, consent is important. But so long as your own people are concerned, your brother, your sister, no, duty, consent is not important. Michael Slander has taken the argument that if Rawls' argument is advanced further, what will happen? Every time we talk about the duty, you have to prove that I have given my consent either expressly or impliedly. Of course, impliedly also you can trace that. But the problem here is what? If the consent cannot be traced, then you can wash your hands off and say that I don't have any duty at all. The only duties are natural duties. Above that, I don't have any other duties unless until I have given my consent. Now here, the argument of the communitarians, in particular Michael Slander, is that whether you are an encumbered self or unencumbered self. Rawls is taking the argument that we are unencumbered. Unencumbered means that I am an individual. I can abstract myself from the family. I can abstract myself from the society because my right is prior to the good. My good will not decide what is right to me. But to the contrary, the communitarians are taking the argument that when you are born in a particular family. So your life is dependent on your family members and on people in the society. So you are not alone. So you are not unencumbered. Unencumbered means what? I don't have any duties. I'll become encumbered only when I give my consent to accept duties. So long as I don't give my consent, I am unencumbered. So I don't have any duties towards others. I will have duties only when I give my consent. So this argument is very strange. The communitarians are saying. Now the communitarians are saying that there are certain duties which do not depend on consent. Because every time you have to trace a consent, imagine that your father says, my dear son, you have a duty towards me. Now you say that, okay, because father and mother, you had sexual intercourse. And then at the time you had sexual intercourse and gave birth to me. No, I did not give my consent. So I am just born like that. Now the father and mother, they will advance the second argument. Because we brought you up, we gave you schooling, we gave you education, we gave you food. And because we have given you all that, impliedly you have consented that tomorrow when we become old, you will support us. Now this is how cruel these arguments are. That means you are not discharging your duties toward the mother and father unless and until the mother father says that you have expressly or impliedly given your duties. I remember one case decided by our Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, definitely High Court, Pandurang versus Babu Rao, wherein a son of our country, a son who is born in that family, he went to the court and said that I don't have any duties towards my parents. Why? Because my parents did not look after me properly when I was a child. So he said that I have duties only when my parents have looked after me properly, and that way I had given them my consent that when you tomorrow become old, that's a Rawlsian argument. But we understand there are certain pious duties. So Michael Slander is taking the argument that when we come into the world, we are encumbered. Encumbered means we have certain duties which are towards our family and they don't depend on consent. Let me come to a very contemporary issue in the world. What is happening in the United States? Immigration issues. Now, so you want to stop immigration. You want, American government wants to say the people from other countries are not welcome. Now, what is the reason? For example, American government can say, if you people come from other countries to America, our jobs are already limited. So the number of jobs will be affected. Americans will be affected. Americans will lose the jobs. Now, the moment you say American, what are human rights? Human rights are above all these things. Human rights means you are an American, I am an Indian. But what is common to both of us is we both are human beings. So when we talk about a general understanding, we say human beings, that's all. We don't go into the particulars. When you go into the particulars, you say he's an American, I'm an Indian, then all the differences will come. But human rights, the concept has come to make the world one, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we don't say he's an American. We don't say he's a Canadian. We say we're all human beings. And that, of course, requires natural duties. So here the problem is what? When Israel, you must understand, in the past, when number of refugees are there, Israeli government, what did it do? It sent some help, wherein it rescued only the Jews who are refugees. Now, Israeli government was asked this question. There were so many other refugees who, of course, were not Jews. But why did you help only the refugees who are Jews? Israeli government said, we are all brothers and sisters. Then what about your human rights duties? Because when it comes to human rights duties, you should not see whether he's an Indian or a Canadian. Everyone is a human being. Refugees are refugees. But don't further go into the particular whether he's an Israeli refugee, whether he's a Hammam refugee. That will take you into particulars. When you go into particulars, what will happen? You cannot discharge your duties properly. You cannot be impartial. You cannot be neutral. So because if you want to be neutral, if you want to be impartial, human rights duties. Now everyone is a human being. The person who requires more help, will help them first. But today, in the contemporary world, we more go into the particulars. We see whether he's an Indian, then I will help him first. And if he's not an Indian, okay, he's not my priority. But human rights jurisprudence will tell you what? That he is a human being, though he might be a Canadian. He's also a human being. Though, of course, he's not an Indian, but what unites you is you're all human beings. And your human rights duties are very important. But now what is happening in America? In America, they are saying that Americans first, buy American goods. These are all wherein they are going to the particulars. And the moment you go into the particulars, you say that outsiders are not welcome in our country. Why? Because Americans are going to lose their jobs. And you also say that American government gives very good social security benefits. In America, it's a strong country. It's an affluent country. So people are entitled to social justice schemes and very good schemes are there. And today the government is saying that Mexicans are not welcome because if Mexicans come, they also take our social security benefits. And that way our affluence will get reduced. Affluence means the way we live life, that the standard of our life will be affected if you people come and stay in America with us. Whether these can be the reasons to say that immigration must not be permitted. But Michael Slander is taking the argument that immigration, people, it can be restricted. Why? Not because of certain other extraneous things. Because we are all one people. For Americans, Americans are special. To go into the particulars. Rawls is saying don't go into particulars. Rawls is saying what? He's talking about human rights language. He's saying that particulars will make you selfish. It is my son and your son. No, I say my son, so I'll be partial. So Rawls talked about veil of ignorance. Veil of ignorance means what? So you will not know whose son he is. Then only you can be neutral. Now your son, other son. The moment and you understand he is my son, you are going into the particulars. When you go into particulars, you cannot discharge your duty properly. You become biased. In the same manner, Michael Slander is talking about what? Go into the particulars. And he says patriotism is a virtue. Let me love my country. It doesn't depend on my consent. So here the particular duties versus the universal duties, they are coming into conflict with each other. As a human being, what are your duties? As a citizen of a particular country, what are your duties? So these duties are coming into conflict. Now sometimes they come into conflict, though most of the time they don't come into conflict, because if there are two people, two children, one is your son, the other is some other person's son. No, you can save your son first, provided you don't, in the process of saving the son, you don't kill the other son. You don't physically assault him. You saved your son, but you did not do anything wrong to the son of the other person. That means the particular versus general. But they did not come into conflict. But there might be situations wherein to save your own son, you have to damage the interest of the other son. And that is the general duty towards the other stand, particular duty towards your stand. But in the name of particular duty, can you override your general duty? Can you deliberately cause harm to the other boy
Murli
just to
sir,
protect the interest of your boy? So these are
Murli
all
sir,
the various issues. And thank you, because my time, I think, might have come to an end. And when we talk about duties in this way, today the contemporary world is witnessing so many problems. The particular duties and then particular things are making us more restricted to our own people. Universal human rights duties, they of course are. So Rawls and Immanuel Kant, they want you to abstract from your surroundings and rise above the particulars. But then Michael Slander, who are communitarians, they are talking about particular. So in this particular context, whatever issues I have thrown up here, I think these are things to ponder over by the enlightened audience here. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity. And then I now take rest. That means now it's for the gathering to go forward.
thank you so much, Murli sir. It was an excellent lecture. And due to paucity of time, we could not continue because of some reasons. But the kind of knowledge and information you provided us regarding this Kartavyam jurisprudence, that is brilliant. And I think for many of us, we have heard it for the first time. So I congratulate you, sir, for the brilliant work which you are doing in this particular area of Kartavya jurisprudence, and we are looking forward to to learn more from you.
Thank you, ma'am. And sorry if I had exceeded the time limit, because I wanted to manage it within 30 to 40 minutes, and then it
नहीं
happens.
सर
I'm sorry for that.
ये बहुत अच्छा था, and that was a very passionate lecture, so we all were enjoying. But online mode में सर कुछ limitations होते हैं which we have to follow, so that's why
Sure. Thank you,
हाँ.
ma'am. Thank you.
So thank you so much, and सबसे पहले today's the entire session was brilliant, and I will extend my thanks to Manoj Sinha sir, Archana Pathak Dave ji, and Murli sir, because they have came up with some new thoughts and ideas, and they ignited our mind to think over certain things. Like Manoj Sinha sir has expressed his views over this concept of Kartavyam, especially in context to African Charter, which talks about the human rights and rights of the people as well as the duties, which recognizes both. And as he said, that sustainability is something which is not possible without realizing the importance of Kartavyam. So in his absentia, Manoj Sinha sir, we are extremely thankful to you. Archana Pathak Dave ji, she has raised a very valid point, fraternity, which I think, which I can draw, after hearing her, listening her, that fraternity is something which is the basic of the basic structure. And if we want to attain the idea of equality, justice, and liberty, then in that circumstances, the first thing which should be protected and respected by all, that is fraternity. और मुरली सर आपका तो इट वाज एक्सीलेंट ब्रिलियंट लेक्चर, और आपने इतना ब्रॉड डोमेन जो है वो कवर किया है, और मुझे लगता है कि जिस तरीके से आपने कनेक्ट किया, और एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट जो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि जब हम अपनी बात करते हैं तो हाउ बेसिकली एज अ ह्यूमन बीइंग वी आर एग्जिस्टिंग, तो हमारी जो फिजिकल बॉडी है दैट इज द गिफ्ट ऑफ आवर पेरेंट्स एंड ऑब्वियसली द सुप्रीम डिवाइन, लेकिन जो नर्चरिंग हमारा एनवायरनमेंट करता है, जो समाज से हम चीजें लेते हैं, उसके अकॉर्डिंग हम सबके प्रति कहीं ना कहीं उत्तरदायित्व है, एंड वी ऑल आर ओब्लाइज, इट इज आवर ऑब्लिगेशन to perform our duty towards the environment, towards our parents, towards the society, and obviously towards the nation also. So with this, I think we should understand the importance of the Kartavya jurisprudence, and it is actually a reality that without performing our duty, we cannot claim any rights. So with this, thank you to all of you. Once again, thank you to our professor in charge, Gunjan Gupta ma'am, Alka Chawla ma'am, and my special thanks to Murli sir, Manoj Sinha ji, and Archana Pathak Dave, and all the participants for their patience listening for more than 2 hours. Thank you. See you again next Sunday. Thank you, Murli sir. Thank